Welcome to the Grow Your Practice podcast. Hi, I'm your host, Chad Madden, owner of Madden Physical Therapy and Breakthrough. Join me each week as we dive into the best practices, systems, principles, tips, and tricks to help you grow your private practice. This episode, we're going to go over the marketing lessons that we can learn from a 15-year-old musician. Hey, everybody, this is Chad Madden with the Grow Your Practice podcast. And in this episode, I'm going to be sharing a personal story with you. And the story goes like this. So this is early 2021. So my 15-year-old son walked into my office at home, and he was 15 at the time. And he said, "Hey, Dad, can you set up a PayPal account for me? And if you're anything like I am, that's huge red flags." And I said, "Listen, what are you buying?" He said, "Well, I'm not buying anything." And he said, "Actually, somebody is paying me." And I said, "Oh, that's kind of weird." And you caught me off guard there. What are they paying you for?" And he said, "Well, I did some work for them." And I said, "Well, who is it?" And he said, and then he went through this explanation. He said, "I don't know if you've heard of this person, but his name is Alex Toomey." I said, "No, I've never heard of him. Who is he?" And he said, "Well, do you know Donald Glover, the actor and stand-up comedian? He has an alter ego, Childish Gambino, who's a rapper and had the 2018 Song of the Year, won a Grammy for it. It's called This Is America." And I said, "Yeah, what does this have to do with Alex Toomey?" And he said, "Well, Alex Toomey produced that song, and Alex actually won a Grammy for it as well." And I said, "So how did you get connected with Alex Toomey?" And he said, "Well, did you ever hear of Kenny Beats?" And I said, "No." And he said, "Well, I entered into this contest on Kenny Beats." And I said, What is that?" And he said, "Well, it's the largest live streaming electronic music production show that there is." And he said, there's like 20,000 people following the show. And Kenny Beats is this musical producer who's kind of famous and or super famous. And he gets on there and he said, "You can compete in art or music." And he said, I ended up winning both. And he said, Alex is a friend of Kenny's, and he went to him and asked him for a reference to do some work for him. And Kenny told him that it was me. And I said, "Hold on, man. And if you understand a little bit of this, so this is mainly happening in Kenny, from what I can see, and Alex are primarily in New York City and Atlanta." And I was like, "Well, you're in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania. Not even Harrisburg. You're really in Grantville, which is farm territory. And we live in an old farmhouse. And how are you getting connected with these people?" And so he showed me the show, and we swam upstream a little bit, paying attention to what he was doing. And anyhow, he said, "I don't even know how much to charge them." And I said, "Well, do they know that you're 15 years old?" And he said, "Absolutely not." And I said, "How are you communicating with them?" And he said, "Well, and he started naming all, various social media platforms that they were using, Discord and Twitch and everything else." And he said, "We communicate that way. And then they have been texting me." And anyhow, in the end of the story, what happened is that, so my 15-year-old son, now 17, his name is Quinn. He generated a lot of demand for his services. And I would say, definitely an outlier, considering again that we live on a farm in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania, not necessarily the music capital of the world. And, he was able to harness a lot of things that are easy to overlook. Yes, it's a cute little dad story, but I think there's a lot that we can learn from it. So I wrote down a couple lessons here, and I want to share them with you, because when I'm talking with practice owners in today's market, it is essentially, if it boils down enough, if we go deep enough. So whether you've lost a clinician, or you couldn't compete with the local hospital or healthcare system because one of your clinicians left, or you can't attract the right clinicians, or you have a profit margin problem, whatever the largest problem is in your business, only 1 or 2 degrees away is something around respect, like feeling disrespected by the market, or it's an issue with how valuable you and your services are in the market. So again, I think we can take a look at it, what a 15-year-old was doing in his bedroom and how he created demand for his own services. And we can take the lessons and apply it to our private practice. That is my hope for you in this episode. So number one, the biggest principle that stood out to me from the story is most people don't see the work. So you might guess that, Quinn got very lucky, right? And I agree, there probably is some luck involved, right? He happened to pick a show where the producer was well connected, right? And it happened to be one of the most popular shows. But what you don't see is the work. What I didn't tell you is from the time he was 5, 6, or 7 years old, he was taking literally weekly piano lessons. They're now an hour and a half, from the same professional musician, Frank. And that by the time he was 12, that he had worked his way through all the music theory books. And Frank actually pulled us aside and said, listen, I want you to understand a little bit about your son, but he is my second student ever who has worked through, all the musical books here. And now we're getting into composing. And he said, most kids, we try to get to practice 15 or 30 minutes a day. And we're lucky if they do that a couple times a week. And I said, yeah, that's not an issue. Quinn will sit down and, wormhole for 3 hours in playing music. He loves it and he has a passion for it. And so you didn't see that. And I didn't include that as part of the story initially. Right. And it's the same exact thing in private practice. We can hear somebody, who has $1 million practice or $10 million practice or $100 million practice and dream and fantasize about all the benefits that they have in life. What we're usually unwilling to do is go back and look at what they were doing 20, 30, 40 years ago and the work that they were putting in, the delayed gratification that they had at that point, in order to get where they're at today. And it's unfortunate because it's where the gold really is looking at the beginning of the story, seeing what they did then to create the success that they have today. And I'll share one other quick story on that one. I think Quinn was 12 or 13 and we were riding in the car. And if you heard when I was on Ryan Payne's podcast, Pain Points of Wealth, the ending question that Ryan and Bob and Chris had asked was, most influential music album that you've, or the album that influenced you the most in your life. And I said, Pink Floyd, Dark Side of the Moon. There is a song, I believe it's on Dark Side of the Moon, called Money. Oddly, when Quinn was 12 or 13, we were riding in the car, that song came on, and out of the blue, he said, isn't this the Pink Floyd song that's in 7/4? And I said, I have no idea what you're talking about. And sure enough, we looked it up and it was in 7/4. And he tried to explain to me, and he was like, just listen to the song. And then he was like, 1, 2, 3, he counted to 7. And then he was like, yeah, quarter note gets up. And he was like, this is definitely 7/4. Like that is something that even, with the very brief musical history that I had, which was a few years of saxophone, a couple years of guitar, and I think 1 year of drums, I could not hear that at all. And he was able to hear that. But again, it's how, oftentimes we see the fruit of success and we perceive it as luck and we ignore the work that went into it. And again, with your practice, in order for you to get where you want to be, oftentimes it's the daily grind, the boring stuff, the writing, reaching out to patients, texting them, emailing them, reaching out to referral sources, reaching out to businesses, and strengthening those relationships in the community. It's really the work that you don't see that is underneath. You only see the tip of the iceberg, and you want the benefits there. while ignoring what's underneath the waterline, the stuff that you don't see. Big principle number two is, uh, speaking of work, there was a lot of failure. Failure for Quinn, and oddly, we were just talking about this the other day. By the way, he would absolutely not be happy with me. I'll have to ask for forgiveness if he ever hears this. But I think it's a remarkable story with some really good principles behind it that can help you out. Um, he was talking about how many times that he entered the contest. So one for art on Kenny Beats, and then another one for actual music production. Um, but how many times he failed. And he talked about, in the beginning, he just got on and listened. Then he started communicating as other people were entering the contest. I think the contests are live. And then, exchanging. And then he started entering and not winning. And then eventually he won. Right. And he talked about, working through failure. And I think a lot of us, especially in private practice, we try something, right, a single time, and we're basically exhausted and spent, and we're never going to do that again. And again, that's unfortunate. I was just on a call here within the last hour with private practice owners, and we were talking about this Jim Collins principle of firing bullets and then cannonballs. And what the analogy, the story that Jim Collins tells is that, if you're on a warship and you see the enemy approaching and you have a pile of gunpowder, what most businesses will do is they will take that entire pile of gunpowder and fire a cannonball. And when it misses the target of the enemy ship, they're basically out of luck, right? They're now exhausted. They've exhausted their resources, their time, money, and energy. And now they're pretty much defenseless. They definitely, can't proceed, can't hit their goal. He said what a better strategy is, and what a lot of businesses will do, is they'll take a little bit of that gunpowder and they'll fire a bullet, and then they'll see where they missed the enemy ship, the target, and then they'll recalibrate the gun, the rifle, right, and fire again, and keep recalibrating, only using a little bit of energy, a little bit of gunpowder, until they eventually hit the target, right, and then they fire a cannonball. And it's very much that way, in our practice. And also, the same exact thing with working through failure, right? Many of us will say, okay, we're going to, and this just came up on the call, we're going to host a workshop. And we host the workshop that we've ever hosted in our entire private practice career. And one person shows up or nobody shows up, right? And I'm sure we've all worked through that. And then rather than say, okay, what do I have to do to fill this up and recalibrate? And I thought this media type was really going to do it for us. And I greatly misfired, right? The classic one is an open house, right? I put a lot into the event. I bought balloons, I bought cupcakes, I have flowers. I opened the doors to my practice for this grand opening, and 7 people showed up, right? So we'll do something like that. We're completely exhausted. We've gone through our time, money, and energy, emotional resources, and now we're spent. We've spent up all of our gunpowder by firing a cannonball, and it didn't hit the target. We have to be more resilient than that. We have to take it as a learning experience, as a feedback from the marketplace that, that it's not going to be as easy, or that we missed marketing principles, or whatever it might be. And, Quinn, in that conversation that I had with him, he talked about doing that. Like he started noticing, what the people that were doing, that were winning, what they were doing. And he said, many of them are professional electronic music producers. But he started paying attention to, what was popular, what Kenny Beats really liked. And, in the end, I think he was the only amateur musician and producer ever that Kenny Beats played live. I know that was a pretty big moment for Steph, my wife, and I, to hear Kenny Beats playing Quinn's SoundCloud on his live on his show. That was pretty cool, and just jamming out to that. That was great. But again, what most of us don't see is the failure that preceded moments like that. The other one, big principle number 3, is going where the attention is. And, on that show, I believe there were 20,000 followers on Twitch, and I think that was the platform that was used. Um, the other thing that I noticed that Quinn did really well is he wasn't only active on the one to many. There's basically a streaming chat on Twitch during the live show, so he was active in that. But then he ended up building an entire network of people that were in the business, right? Other professional musicians, and communicating with them one on one, and did that really well. Whether it was on Snapchat or texting or some other sort of direct messaging, but he ended up building a network out of that. So he went where the attention was, and then he ended up doing a lot of personal follow up and individual conversations as well. Again, I think that's an important component of what we're doing in private practice. The one thing that I've really picked up on recently in talking with owners is there is poor discernment, poor differentiation in our minds in marketing. And I'll go through a quick example of what I mean here. So we essentially have three target markets. We have our patient list, past and present patients, where we get reactivated patients and we get word of mouth referrals. They're the two things that predominantly come out of good efforts there. The next place is I'll call warm third party referrals. It might be a physician, nurse practitioner, PA, podiatrist, dentist, etc. That's referring to you, or it might be a lookalike business, a boutique gym that hosts you for a lunch and learn, or a large employer in your area that hosts you for a health fair. All examples of lookalike business, warm third party referrals, right? And then the third target market that we have is the cold traffic market. So this is where we're doing, our meta advertising, our alphabet advertising on Google and YouTube, our TikTok advertising, and then our legacy media as well. And what we often do as practice owners is we mistake effort, and everything that I mentioned there, typically when we're talking about marketing is one to many. So running, a direct mail piece that goes out to 80,000 homes, that's a one to many effort. Running a series of Facebook ads or Instagram ads, that's a one to many effort. Running a patient newsletter that gets delivered to 1,000 people, that's a one to many effort. We often mistake that for the one to one communication, which is significantly more valuable to our business, right? And it's with the one to many, we're typically trying to capture attention. But once we capture that attention, just as Quinn did, then it's up to us to have those one-on-one conversations, which have to happen, right? So one-to-one human conversation, I send out a patient newsletter, somebody calls my office and they say, hey, you treated me for my shoulder, can you treat me for my knee? That has to happen either at the front desk with the marketing team or some sort of, scheduling marketing position, or ultimately with me as the clinician, or I'm having that one-to-one communication. Other one-to-one communication can be an email, text, like we do with Breakthrough and the Breakthrough system, or it could be even like a handwritten card to a patient. When they graduate our plan of care, and we're celebrating that, and we, essentially send that person a handwritten letter, or a personal email, or a personalized text message that is specific to them. That's one-to-one. Right. So we have three different target markets in the elementary example that I gave. We have a lot of effort into one to many type advertising. So again, patient newsletters, online, offline campaigns. And then we also have one-to-one communication. And ignoring either component is going to greatly reduce the marketing effort that we have, and also reduce the demand for our services. We have to have both moving forward, going into the marketplace, if we really want to, if we truly want to realize our potential marketplace value. The other, I have one other part of the story with Quinn that I'll give, just in terms of what he's done in such a short period of time. It's cool to see. But my wife and I recently were talking. I think it was actually over the Christmas holiday, and she said, Quinn just turned 17. it's time for him to get a job. He doesn't spend money, as like a pile of cash in his room, just saved up, and pretty low maintenance, um, and neat to see. But anyhow, so great with money. And I said, well, he can work whenever he wants to work, and he can do it online and in music. And, is there a happy medium here rather than going to Hershey Park or getting a job like that? Is there something that he can do that he's passionate about? And I had a conversation with him and I said, listen, between now and the end of school, do you think you could, earn some money with the demand for your services that you have online? Like, could you do some work? And he said, how much do you think I need to earn? And I said, $1,000. And he said, yeah, I can do that. And he said, actually, there's this producer down in Atlanta who's not Alex Tomei. And he said, he invited me down there, but he said, how do I get to Atlanta? And it just opened up this whole other conversation. Really cool to see. And, right now, even though he hasn't even graduated or completed his junior year in high school, definitely demand for his services, put in the work, went through a lot of failure, definitely has some grit there, which is super cool to see, and has created a high demand for himself very earlier, really, even before his actual career is started here. And what I'm telling you is, if you stick with those principles, you can do the same thing in your private practice, in your career. You can create increased marketplace demand for your services by applying these principles gradually over time, and working through failure, putting in the work, and then also building networks, building lists, and having a lot of, in the end, one-to-one valuable conversations. Hope you enjoy this story, and also you took hold of the principles, you remember the principles, and you put them into practice. And yeah, again, I hope you enjoyed this as much as I enjoyed making it for you. And I will see you in the next episode. Thanks, everybody. See ya. Are you a practice owner with a growth mindset? You're looking to grow your revenues, leave a bigger impact, build a legacy, and help more people in your practice, yet at the same time, you're dealing with the big challenges and headwinds like declining reimbursements, increased cost of doing business because of inflation, how to incentivize your staff, or deciding where's the best place to run your online ads. Growing a practice can be absolutely overwhelming. To help, Breakthrough has put together a unique offer that I think you'll be interested in. For a limited time, listeners of this podcast can schedule a risk-free growth consultation with a Breakthrough growth expert. On that call, you'll walk through what you're currently doing in your practice and what you could be doing to increase the demand for your services. Breakthrough's mission is to help people overcome their health challenges naturally. And the best way for them to do that is by helping private practice owners just like you through building more demand for your services. Go to breakthrough.com/podcast offer to take advantage of this unique opportunity. On that call, you'll learn the key principles of how practice owners are helping more people, creating a bigger impact, and building better businesses with Breakthrough systems. As an added bonus, the team at Breakthrough is giving a $50 Amazon gift card to any of the podcast listeners who attend the growth consultation. Sign up for your growth consultation and $50 gift card at getbreakthrough.com/podcast offer. Again, that's getbreakthrough.com/podcast offer. Remember to visit getbreakthrough.com to access our free resource library designed specifically for private practice growth. While you're there, make sure you register for a complimentary growth assessment to learn about potential opportunities for growth in your local market. Again, thank you for tuning into the Grow Your Practice podcast and supporting our mission to help people in pain get back to normal naturally.